Welcome.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to KMFK. My name is Kevin. Welcome to episode 2. And today we're going to be talking about the Arkham series. 4 games that are just so phenomenal in their design, their approach, their mechanics, everything. But I'm actually going to be looking at the downsides of them. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar, the Arkham series is a bunch of games based around Batman, which is awesome because ever since Batman's first game in 1986 on the ZX Spectrum, he hasn't really been getting the best treatment, but he's definitely not gotten the worst. Characters like Aquaman got a game on the GameCube, and it was terrible. Superman got a game on the Nintendo 64. It was fucking terrible. And Batman was really treated the best out of all the worst games. So no matter how bad the game was, Batman's games were always a little bit better. But it wasn't until the Arkham games came out that Batman got what I consider the royal treatment. And that was a pretty fair assessment, actually, when you consider it. Now, there are 5 games in the Arkham series, technically. There is Arkham Origins Blackgate, Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and Arkham Knight. I have not played Blackgate, but I have played the other 4, so those are the 4 that I'm going to talk about. Now, the thing is, I'm not going to talk about every little bit of it in detail. I'm not going to go into why it might have happened that way. I'm just pulling 7 things out of the entire quadrilogy of games that I did not like about it. If I was to talk about all the things that I did like, we'd be here forever. But this is in no particular order, with no sense of ill will towards Rocksteady Studios or WB Montreal, who made the Arkham Origins game. I just want to talk about the 7 things that I did not like about it, and maybe future game developers or future games can implement these kinds of things into it later, or maybe they won't, who knows. But we're going to talk about them, and hopefully you'll agree with some of these decisions that I have made to put them on the list. So, let's get started with number 1. They used Deathstroke way too early in Arkham Origins. Now, before we get really deep into this, I need you to understand that from the perspective of a fan of Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, that Arkham Origins really hyped itself up. Arkham Origins is the first in the series, but it's actually the 3rd game in the franchise. So it's a prequel, supposedly taking place around the 1st or 2nd year of Batman's existence, but it's the 3rd game to be released in the universe that the games have created. In this Origins game, as I've mentioned, Batman is still very early on in his career, and he's only really fought low-level thugs with a lot of superstitions, like, you have to go out on a certain day or a certain night, or if something happens in a specific way, it's a sign that you're not supposed to do it, like that kind of shit. But what happened when they did this trailer for Arkham Origins is they really hyped it up to be about Deathstroke. And this is before we knew what the actual plot was. The trailer, and I remember this very vividly, even if it is a little incorrect, vividly though, I do remember Batman and Deathstroke fighting on top of a freight car, like in a warehouse, or not a warehouse, a freight yard, I guess, like on a boat, those kinds of freight yards. I'm not sure if I'm making sense there, but the point is, that's where they were fighting, and it was just this amazing fight. And then it just showed Batman and Deathstroke facing off, fighting each other, and it was great. I'm like, oh, it's so awesome! But then we found out what the actual plot was, and the plot revolves around a criminal overlord named Black Mask putting a $50 million bounty on Batman's head on Christmas Eve, one night only. The bounty calls 8 assassins from all over the world to try and kill the Batman and claim the prize. But Deathstroke was the one that got the most hype. And a lot of these people, I wouldn't even consider them to be worthy of being on that list of 8. Now, when push comes to shove, you have your typical mercenary assassin people. Bane was a big one, literally and figuratively. Seeing Bane in this context of just a simple hitman was weird, but then if you look into the character's comic history, you're like, oh, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. He was technically a mercenary. Mercenaries, assassins, kinds of the same thing. They work the same way. You had Copperhead. She was another character that really gave me a run for my money in that game. I did not like her. She wasn't hard to beat, but she was definitely frustrating. And Lady Shiva, who was actually a side character in a side quest. And that was something that I should have probably added onto the list too, is that these 8 assassins that you have to fight in Christmas Eve, you only have to fight, I think, 3 of them in the main story. The rest are side quests. Consider that like a 1.5. And in the prologue, the first assassin that you fight was Killer Croc. Like, what? How is Killer Croc an assassin? If Killer Croc is a fucking assassin, then I'm a ninja master. That's not how that works. Killer Croc is not an assassin. And Batman even makes a point of this to say later. He goes, I was fighting a giant alligator man. He's just as confused as anyone else would be. But because of this, Deathstroke was the one that got all the attention, because Deathstroke is a friggin' popular character. In Teen Titans on TV, the animated series, back in the early 2000s, he was referred to as Slade. They couldn't call him Deathstroke. It's for kids. So they call him Slade. His real name is Slade Wilson, so yeah, of course, that still fits. But in the live-action versions, where he appeared on Arrow and the not quite as good, but still memorable in some ways, live-action version of Teen Titans, he was referred to as Deathstroke, but he was a mercenary assassin, superhuman enhancements. He would make Captain America look like a fucking joke, in my opinion. And he's hyped up to be this big, grandiose thing. He's in the trailer, for Christ's sakes. And he's the second boss. He's literally the second boss. Remember how earlier I said that Killer Croc was the boss of the prologue? Well, guess what? Deathstroke is the boss of Chapter 1. And it sucks. Because you've got this big epic scene of Batman and Deathstroke fighting on top of these freight cars, and it's, boom, bam, and, swords and batarangs are flying everywhere. There's ninja dust going all over the place. People are just kicking the shit out of each other. It's an epic brawl of cat and mouse. And Deathstroke was beaten literally about 2 hours, maybe 3 into the game. And then he doesn't show up again until a post-credit scene at the end of the game. This is, no pun intended, DC, an injustice. And yes, Deathstroke was an injustice, so it's kind of a double pun, actually. But this is terrible, because I really like Deathstroke. He's not my favorite DC villain or anti-hero or whatever, but he is absolutely not worthy of being cast aside so quickly. If you're going to make him a part of your trailer to advertise this big game, why the fuck would you use him so early, then cast him aside and not show him again until after you've sat through 15 minutes of credits? And we'll come back to that credit thing later, but honestly, and you could argue, well, Rocksteady Studios didn't make Arkham Origins, which is true. They didn't. Rocksteady was the company that made Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and Arkham Knight. Arkham Origins was actually shipped over to WB Montreal, a Canadian Warner Brothers company, Warner Brothers Interactive company, I should say, and they were designated to program the whole game. That was completely off of Rocksteady's table, wasn't even on Rocksteady's plate, wasn't even on Rocksteady's friggin' menu. This was a completely different company that did it. But even knowing that, they could have done so much more with Deathstroke. And I'm extremely disappointed that they didn't. And I really hope that maybe there's a moment in the future where we have a Deathstroke game. Now, I'm going completely off of memory here, but I'm positive that Deathstroke appeared again in Arkham Knight. But again, it wasn't really that grand appearance. I don't remember much about fighting him. I don't remember much about what happened with him. I just remember him being there, beating him, and going, okay, well, he's gone again. All right. I honestly haven't played Arkham Knight in years. I hope I'm wrong. But yeah, as far as that goes, my opinion, he was not used to his full potential in those first few sections of Arkham Origins. Number 2, no fast traveling in buildings for all the games. If you're like me, you probably want to get all the achievements and the trophies in a game. And in the Arkham series, there are a ton of collectibles, which, by the way, is also on this list. But the thing is, there's so much backtracking that needs to be done that it actually upsets me that I have no way to fast travel in games. For example, there are Riddler trophies and riddles that you have to collect, and you have to walk past a lot of them because you just don't have the proper upgrades yet. You're 10 minutes into the game, and there's a collectible right there. Oh, good, I'm going to pick it up. Oh, wait, you can't. You have to have the level 3 explosive. Well, why the fuck is the level 3 explosive in front of me right now? Why do I have to wait? Why can't I just get it now? Like, why would you put it there? I got frustrated with this during the Arkham Asylum section, but it really didn't hit hard for me until Arkham City, when I was in the steel mill. Now, I did mention that this is in all the games, but it's specifically the steel mill that really cemented it into my head, because you really need to be able to remember how to get from point A to point B and so on and so forth. Even if it was the ability to just warp back to the main entrance, that would be fine. But the game doesn't even let you do that. So after wandering to wherever it was to grab the last collectible, the exit is probably on like the 5th floor, and you're on like the 1st or maybe the 12th. Just hypothetically. There aren't that many floors in anything here that you have to go to. But the thing is, once you've taken down all the thugs and beaten down everything, and you, depending on how you got there too, makes a big difference. In the steel mill specifically, there's spots you have to grapple. There are locations that you have to shimmy along. There are floating blocks of ice that you need to ride and use your grappling hook to pull you across giant lakes of toxic chemicals. It's just a hassle and a half. And not being able to go from the pause menu or the map menu and say fast travel back to the entrance of the building is a huge problem. And it's only a huge problem because if you're a collectible person, you want to get the achievements, the trophies, whatever, you're gonna have to do this a lot. So if I was to take the left route when I enter a building, get all the stuff, I have to then backtrack all the way. It would have been so much better if I could just press the menu button or the map button or whatever and then return to entrance. Don't even have to do a return to, you don't even have to select a specific room. Just return to entrance. Boom, done. And then I can retrace my steps going forward, but then it will automatically put me backwards. And it's that kind of simplicity that was lacking that really kind of made me go, what the fuck? I mean, the game's never really implemented a fast travel option to return to the entrance of an area ever, but I don't understand why they couldn't. It didn't need to be super high maintenance or high end, just return to entrance would have been good enough. Now, Origins actually did fast travel, but it wasn't interior. It was exterior only, going from one spot of the city to another spot of the city, and it's not the best. It's still kind of irritating to have to do that. You know, you're on the northwest corner of the map and you need to go to the southeast corner. You have to click on the place you want to go to, but there's only specific points that you can go to. Like there's a radio tower that you have to select as your option. And then from there you can glide or run or whatever from that radio tower to wherever it is you want to go. It's not perfect, but at least it's a fast travel mechanic. And I don't understand why they couldn't do this on the inside of buildings as well. So, something to keep in mind for future games. Maybe have something that allows you to fast travel back to the beginning of a room. It doesn't have to be, you know, from the bathroom to the living room kind of thing. It just has to be return to entrance or something simple like that. Not BioShock. Borderlands does that, I'm pretty sure. So, are you really that much worse than Borderlands that you don't even have a return to entrance area? My God, come on. Number 3. Too many Riddler collectibles. This goes in tandem with number 2, but it deserves to have its own spot because fuck these numbers. Now, I did do a small bit of research before I started doing this recording, so my numbers might be a little bit off. I just quickly scanned the achievements lists on how many trophies there were to collect. And by trophies, I mean Riddler collectibles. Now, the Riddler leaves all these things lying about from Origins all the way up to the end of Arkham Knight. And all you have to do is collect them. Again, these are trophies. These are actual riddles you need to solve and take pictures of whatever it is the riddle is asking you about. For example, in Arkham Asylum, there's one that says, Tweedledee saw it. Can you see it? And you have to take a picture of a seesaw. Because see and saw, even though you couldn't see it when I was speaking, were all in capital letters. That was your hint. And Tweedledee is a villain in the Batman universe. He and his cousin Tweedledum both got plastic surgery to look like identical twins, even though they're cousins. And then when you take the picture of the seesaw, your reward is a biography on Tweedledee and Tweedledum. It's kind of cool. But there are riddles like that. There's Riddler trophies. In some games there are, I forget what kind of packs they are, but they're like backpacks that have like, I'm going to say discombobulators, but it's really more like a wave erasing thing to fuck with radio waves. I can't think of it right now. That kind of stuff, you have to destroy those. Like, they come in different sizes and shapes and kinds, and there's a whole bunch of variety to it, don't get me wrong. But check out these numbers in the order of least to most. In Arkham Origins, there are 200 collectibles. In Arkham Asylum, there are 240 collectibles. In Arkham Knight, 315. And in Arkham City, 440. Now, for Arkham City having 440, 40 of those are actually just DLC trophies for Catwoman that you can collect as the Catwoman character that you can play at the end of the game. Okay, so that's not too bad. That's still 400. That's a lot. And the thing is, after you've collected all of them, all you do is you beat the crap out of the Riddler again. At the end of Origins, when you collect all the Riddler stuff, guess what? Boom, he's beaten. Punch him up a couple of times, and he goes to Arkham. In Arkham Asylum, boom, the police actually show up at his door because police gives a broadcast signal of where he is. In Arkham Knight, again, he's using these people he's kidnapped to basically play a big game of Batman Forever. In which the context to which I was trying to explain that is he has a huge trap that the person will die if Batman doesn't solve it right. So I don't know how I somehow completely derailed my thought into that process. And then with Arkham City, he's just got them running all of his machines. But you have to destroy or capture or whatever all of these Riddler trophies, and 400 of them is too many. And you can argue that there's a lot of variety, which there is, but that doesn't make it any better. Just because there's 700 Pokemon doesn't mean that it's fun to collect 700 Pokemon. Just because there's 400 riddles doesn't make it okay when you realize that only 80 of them are frustrating. That's still 80 frustrating riddles. And to make it worse is that some of the riddles that you actually have to collect are exceptionally frustrating because they don't add up one at a time. So to give you a better example, you have to break those backpacks that I was telling you about, the discombobulator things, but only every 5 of them count. Same thing with Arkham Asylum with the Joker teeth. That was a part of the Riddler challenges. There's little chattering teeth and all across the floor. You have to destroy them. You get points for destroying the first 5, the first 10, and I think the first 15 and 20 or 20. It's either going to be 5, 10, 15, and 20 or 5, 10, and 20. But the point is, not every single one counts as a point towards it. You have to get that number up more. And that's the irritating thing, is that when you destroy those backpacks, sure, you've got 7 of them, but you're only getting credited for destroying 1 of them because 5 of them make up 1 full point. And that's the frustrating thing, especially when you don't know what you're looking for. And sometimes you find them by accident and you forget that you found them and you destroy it because you're in the middle of combat and maybe you use an explosive gel and you blew one up by accident. Whoops. Like, it's not common for that kind of stuff to happen, but it can happen. And the game is very generous with giving out hints on where to find this stuff. It absolutely is. But having a walkthrough built into the game doesn't mean that the 400 that I have to collect are fun to collect. It just means that I have more access and I don't have to look it up on the internet. And even then, that still doesn't take away from the fact that 400 fucking trophies is too fucking much to collect. So that's all I'm going to say about that one. Just there's way too much. Tone it down. And we're going to leave it at that one. Next on the list, the end boss of Arkham Asylum. I'm just going to get this out of the way. The end boss of Arkham Asylum, the Titan Joker, is anticlimactic as all hell, and it's ridiculously silly. The plot of Arkham Asylum is that Joker has been captured by Batman and put back in the asylum, but it was all part of Joker's plan to not only lock Batman in the asylum, but to also release all the inmates so that they can all get revenge on him. It's a very, very basic, but very well-designed plot. You would think it would have been done already. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it might have. But the point is, this game does it so friggin' well, and it's really, really disappointing to get to the ending of the game. Batman has to recapture the Joker, who is running loose along the asylum. Harley Quinn has control over every door and gate, which means that Batman has to use his gadgets to get through certain force fields and stuff. And there is a shit ton of other things that Batman has to contend with. Specifically, that Joker has been playing with Batman's Venom formula to create Titan monsters. Titan being the name of the upgrade that Joker's made to Bane's Venom. Bane's venom is what gives him that big muscly, beastly appearance. And mixing that with Joker's formula, Joker's laughing gas, I think, or toxin or whatever, turns it into something that Joker has been referring to as Titan. So it's called the Titan formula. And he wants to make that Titan formula on a massive scale and inject it into the city's water supply and mutate everyone into the fucking monster, and basically run the whole fucking city of Gotham with it, and then eventually just destroy the world or whatever it is he wants to do. And Batman has to stop that, while he also has to contend with Poison Ivy, Harley Quinn, three interactions with Scarecrow in a fucking hallucination world. And after all of this crazy insanity, from giant piranha plants to stealthily taking down thugs so that Harley Quinn can't shoot Commissioner Gordon point blank with a pistol, and fighting Bane and running him over with your Batmobile and fucking trying to dodge Killer Croc in the sewers, it all comes down to a cage match on the rooftop between Batman and Joker, who has taken one too many hits of his own friggin' Titan formula. Even on the hardest difficulty, it's super easy. All you need to do is just use the Batclaw when his back is turned to you, and he'll fall from the second tier onto the first tier. You just punch the shit out of him a little bit. That's it. I mean, yeah, some regular enemies will spawn in with knives and baseball bats, and a couple of them have guns, but honestly, even on the hardest difficulty, if you've made it this far, you shouldn't be having that many problems taking them out. And the thing is, I'm not alone in this. A lot of people thought about how bad this was. And a lot of people agree that this is one of the most anticlimactic fights ever. It was cool in its in the way that they thought about it, but if you ever get a chance, look at the alternate art. This was something that I thought was super awesome. If you look at the alternate art of Titan Joker, the version that they went with was the big hulking, bigger than Bane version with big ass muscles. Like, this guy has abs, and this guy has so many six packs he could open his own fucking beer store. But one of the versions of the alternate versions that they wanted to go with, was he was much more slender. He was skinnier. He was almost like a xenomorph without the tail and the deformed head. He was basically the equivalent of, let's say he was equivalent of Ragdoll from the Flash universe. He was very flexible. He was extremely skinny. He was able to dig his nails into the walls and the ceilings and hide and climb and scamper around. I don't know how they were planning on using him as a combat enemy, but that could have been really cool too if it was like a stealth approach where you had to sneak up on him and then, put him in a headlock and punch him in the jaw or something. I don't fucking know. But they went with the big hulking behemoth version, and I'm not a huge fan of that, but at the same time, obviously there are a lot of things that Arkham series hasn't really done all that great. But at the same time, come on guys, this is the end battle of the first game. You could have had such a better fight at the end of this. And the saddest part is, I'm afraid to find out how many people were turned away from Arkham City and Arkham Origins and Arkham Knight because the Arkham Asylum boss battle at the end was so bad. Next up, 3 of the 4 DLC packs of Arkham City. When the Arkham City game was originally launched on the Xbox 360, I wasn't aware that the DLC would actually be coming. The 360 version of the game that I own is never going to be complete because not only do I own the Xbox One and PS4 versions, because I'm a boss, I refuse to pay for the DLC. Now, there is a Game of the Year edition, but I already have the original version. Why would I pay an extra, whatever it is, to get the bonus Game of the Year edition? Who fucking cares? I already own the Arkham Asylum collection, the Arkham collection, sorry, not Asylum collection, the Arkham collection, as I said, on Xbox One and PS4. I have all the DLC for free. And that is, by the way, called the Return to Arkham game. It's called Return to Arkham, and it consists of Asylum and City, all the DLC for both games, which is great. The DLC for Arkham City, however, was for Catwoman, Robin, Nightwing, and Harley Quinn. The Catwoman DLC was $10 and was mostly just rehashed combat and Predator challenges that utilize her gimmicks to basically do the same things as Batman. There's also the storyline that I talked about a little bit earlier when I was talking about all those extra trophies, the 40 trophies in Arkham City for 440 total. That actually is a part of Catwoman's storyline, which explains what she was going through during Batman's campaign in the story. It's not great, but it was interesting. But again, on the downside, it really isn't very long, so $10 might be asking for an awful lot. The Robin and Nightwing DLCs were $7 each, so we're looking at about $14. And again, they were just combat and Predator challenges. They were rehashed Batman maps that catered to their unique abilities, just like Catwoman's were. So already, we're looking at 3 different DLCs, Robin, Nightwing, and Catwoman. And most of it is just Batman's maps with Robin, Nightwing, or Catwoman's weapons. Catwoman has a slight advantage because she has a full story mode that she has to go through with her own collectibles and everything, but that doesn't really change the fact that paying $7 for Nightwing or Robin just to do the Batman map challenges again, that's really not worth it. But the final one was Harley Quinn's Revenge, which was a $10 DLC that takes place after the events of Arkham City. Spoiler alert, after Joker dies at the end of Arkham City, Harley Quinn then blames Batman for it, even though it was Joker's own fault. She then regroups Joker's gang and starts to create a plan to get revenge on Batman. The storyline has Harley kidnapping Batman, and you play as Robin, and you have to rescue Batman from Harley Quinn. Throughout the campaign, you're swapping between Robin and another character when the game demands it, but the DLC is short and only takes a couple of hours to beat it. Taking into consideration that there are 4 DLCs here that equate to about $34 in total before taxes, on top of the $60 game, what the fuck is with that? DLC isn't mandatory, and you could just opt not to buy it. But for completionists who want the full gamer score, who want all the platinum trophies or whatever, that's not an option. The overall quality isn't that great, and Harley Quinn's Revenge was really the only thing that was worth purchasing in the first place. The Game of the Year edition was announced the same day that the Harley Quinn Revenge DLC launched. So on top of releasing 3 DLCs ahead, and then releasing the 4th one the same day that they're saying, hey, the Game of the Year edition is out, so if you've already spent $30 on this, or whatever, if you've already spent $24 on these 3 DLCs over here for Catwoman, Robin, and Nightwing, you might as well just spend the extra $10 on the Harley Quinn one, because, you know, your other option is to buy the Game of the Year edition for like $40 or $50 that comes with all the DLC for free. You're honestly better off just saving yourself the money and just spending the $10 over here. I would have been pissed if I had done that. DLCs are not exactly the best way to increase your game's playability. Usually you have to have quality. And the quality here is pretty lacking. Harley's DLC is the best of the 4 of them. And honestly, I still wouldn't have bought it for myself. I'd never played the DLC until I got the Return to Arkham game. And unless I was given an Xbox gift card or something so that I didn't have to spend my own money, I still probably wouldn't have bought it. Not for nothing, they definitely tried, but there just isn't enough here to warrant that much of a price tag. And it's super, 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 super irritating to see a company like Rocksteady shelling out this content and trying to pawn it off as good when it's literally just a different skin on the same thing from before. So that is disappointing to me, and hopefully that doesn't happen again in the future. Number 6, the post-credit scene from Arkham Origins. Now this one again ties back to the beginning where I said that Deathstroke did not appear very much in the Arkham Origins game. Deathstroke, at this point in the Arkham Origins game, has been captured and imprisoned, but is approached after the credits by a woman named Amanda Waller. Fans of DC, or people who were stupid enough to sit through Suicide Squad, don't worry, I am one of you, will recognize Amanda Waller as the leader of the Suicide Squad. The reason that she's approaching Deathstroke is that she has a job for him, and she wants him to join the Suicide Squad. However, they don't go anywhere with this as far as I'm aware. For the uninitiated, the Suicide Squad is a group of criminals who perform Black Ops missions for the government. If they succeed in their mission, then they get time taken off their prison sentences. Pretty straightforward. If they die, well, you're criminals. Who gives a shit anyways? The amount of time that they lose, however, usually varies from mission to mission, and the Suicide Squad itself, as a group, has had a revolving door of membership since the 1980s when it started. Now, the Suicide Squad being in the Arkhamverse really did excite me, but after so many years, I still don't know what the fuck they were talking about with this. There's a companion piece to the Arkham Origins called Blackgate, which is the game that I hadn't played yet, and it takes place 3 months after the events of Origins, but it doesn't really clear anything up, so nothing happened there. In Arkham Origins Blackgate, it's a side-scroller, and Batman is trying to capture the Penguin, Black Mask, and the Joker after Blackgate has an explosion. The game, again, has Amanda Waller in it and reveals a Suicide Squad teaser in the post-credits scene, with Deadshot and Bronze Tiger inside a chopper with Amanda Waller. Bronze Tiger, by the way, is a pretty badass villain. I don't know much, but I've seen that name pop up so many times, and from the scenes that I've seen them in, I mean, I'm pretty sure there's more than one Bronze Tiger, but I've never seen a Bronze Tiger that was terrible. But anyway, so they're in a helicopter with Amanda Waller and a Batman, and Batman has a tracking device on the bottom of it. And that still doesn't explain anything. Now, you could argue that the animated film Assault on Arkham is the thing that leads up to is what it was leading up to. But Bronze Tiger isn't in that movie, so I don't think that's it. The Arkham Wiki actually brings up Assault on Arkham, but again, it doesn't mention any specifics. I did read that there was supposed to be a Suicide Squad game announced in 2012, but the project hasn't had any information or updates and is more than likely abandoned. So I honestly have no idea where the fuck they were going with this. But to have it appear in not one, but 2 different games, each one with the same Deathstroke character in it, I would love to know where the fucking finish line is for this. I don't understand why there is so much hype for something that doesn't exist. So, if you know what the fuck is going on with this Arkham Assault fucking Suicide Squad shit, by all means, please let me know, because I would love to be able to say, hey, this is what we're talking about here. Because I love Suicide Squad, I do like Deathstroke, but holy shit, you can't just keep having all this hype and have it build up to nothing. That's called blue balling. You don't want to be blue balling. And number 7, the final one. I know I said that this was all out of order, but I strongly and firmly believe that this is the biggest one, the biggest disappointment in the entire franchise. The identity of Arkham Knight in Arkham Knight. The final Arkham game that was supposed to be a huge send-off to the Dark Knight, and it all comes down in a huge blaze of glory. Now, I know that there is hype about another Arkham game that has been rumored. I haven't looked into it recently. I'll probably do it after I'm done recording this. But the point is, this was supposed to be the grand finale, the big boom of glory, where Batman is finally revealed to be Bruce Wayne. The city finds out. Bruce Wayne nukes the Wayne Manor. And it's supposed to be this huge send-off. For all the things the game does right, you would think that what it does wrong would be nitpicking. But this just isn't the case. In the Arkham Knight game, Gotham has been overrun and taken hostage by Scarecrow of all people, which I love because Scarecrow is my favorite Batman villain. Well, one of his lieutenants, the titular Arkham Knight himself, takes a long and excessively long, drawn-out vengeance plot against Batman. The character has a huge grudge against him and blames him for everything that's happened to Gotham over the years, and at this point, if you know anything about the Bat family, absolutely anything about the Bat family or Batman's history, you know who this person is already. And I'm gonna spoil it for you right now. It's Jason fucking Todd. For the unfamiliar, the uninitiated, the uneducated, or those who just don't remember, Jason Todd was the second Robin. Dick Grayson left to become Nightwing, and Batman adopted Jason straight off the streets, legitimately a street orphan. Batman trained him as a means to control his anger towards the world, Jason's anger towards the world. And things were going okay until the Joker kidnapped Jason, tortured him, and left him to die in the 1988-1989 run of the comics. Now, Jason had always been a bit of an asshole. He had a huge grudge against the world for the way that he had been treated, despite, having no real problems to deal with. But he was overly aggressive and overly violent, and this started causing a bit of a rift between the two. When Jason Todd was originally conceived as the second Robin, there was a lot of flack by the fans about this, because Dick Grayson had been Robin for so friggin' long now that how dare they replace him with someone who was as lackluster and as over-the-top stupid as Jason Todd. Because of this crossroads, the writers had written two separate storylines for Jason Todd's future. One where he died, and one where he lived. Because they didn't want to choose one path without pissing off the fan base, they actually let the fans vote on which one they wanted. The very next issue, Jason Todd was dead. As a whole, this isn't a terrible story arc, and Jason Todd is more of a tragic Shakespearean character than a comic book character. But this reveal is a huge fucking letdown. Okay? The Arkham games have always had snippets of comic book elements, like Barbara Gordon being Batman's radio contact under the moniker of Oracle. These little details are cool and were always somehow connected. For example, in Arkham Asylum, Batman and Oracle discuss the Joker shooting Barbara Gordon in the spine. That actually happened. If you've ever read the comic book, there was a comic book, and I'm so embarrassed that I can't remember what the fuck it's called right now. It's one of my favorite stories of all time, but it actually fucking happened. It actually happened. It adds to the Arkhamverse without slowing down the pacing, and when it's done right, it can be a welcome addition. And it's so pathetic in a way to see that they went to the lowest common denominator. When we find that Jason Todd is the Arkham Knight, it feels obligatory in its reveal. Jason Todd, before this game, before Arkham Knight, was never mentioned before in the series. And you could argue that Tim Drake, the third Robin, exists in Arkham City, so it makes sense that Jason does. The problem with that logic is that Drake appears as Arkham City DLC. So while it's jarring for him to just show up in the Arkhamverse like this, at least he was revealed in a previous installment first. Jason doesn't get an iota of acknowledgement until his game, and on top of going with the lowest common denominator, it felt like they shoehorned his arc in at the last minute. He goes from not existing to having his entire backstory revealed over the course of like 4 flashbacks. And because it's all happening to a character we never met, inside the mind of a man, Batman, who we never saw interact with him, it leaves no lasting impression, and it gives you no reason to sympathize for either one of them. They tried to add depth to Jason by throwing DLC for Red Hood into Arkham Knight, but it doesn't do anything to cushion the blow from a subpar reveal on a subpar character disguised as a badass. I love Red Hood. I love his comic series. The Outlaws is one of my favorites, but this version is a cardboard cutout of his former self, and it pisses me off greatly. Literally having no acknowledgement of his previous existence in the last 3 games. You know what? I'm actually going to do one worse. I will say 4 games, because between Origins, Blackgate, Asylum, and City, they could have mentioned him at least once. But they never did. Not fucking once. And because they never did, I didn't give a fuck about who he was underneath. And I was more angry that it was Jason Todd, because I can distinctly remember the people at Rocksteady going, oh yeah, Arkham Knight, he's a unique character. He's a very unique character with a unique history. That led me to believe that Jason Todd was not the Arkham Knight. That the Arkham Knight was a different person altogether who had some other kind of vendetta. Maybe it could have been Hush. It could have been Thomas Elliott. He already had his own arc in Arkham City, but at the time, Arkham Knight hadn't been released yet, so who fucking knew? Thomas Elliott hadn't appeared in Arkham Knight yet because Arkham Knight hadn't fucking been revealed. But that really bothered me. And because of that, even though these are no particular order, I do find that Jason Todd being the Arkham Knight to be the biggest disappointment in the whole goddamn thing. And honestly, I think I'm going to have to call it there. That is my 7 most disliked things about the Arkham series. It's not bad by any means. Most of the complaints were nitpicks, traveling back to the beginning of the building or having too many collectibles. I'll understand if you're disappointed with the quality of this video, podcast, whatever, because I'm just complaining about shit that every game seems to suffer from. But honestly, fuck Jason Todd. He has the potential to be a great character, but he's just a whiny little bitch. Now, for anyone who's upset because I didn't mention the combat challenges or the Predator challenges, I find the Predator challenges and the bonus maps to be ridiculously simplistic. Sometimes you gotta redo them, but I don't find them to be very hard. I do not do well with combat challenges. It takes me lots and lots of practice to get there. But I'm a shitty person when it comes to that. I'm a terrible fucking combat map player. So if I can finally beat them, anybody can. There are tons of things that I could have complained about in this game, but these are the 7 things that stuck out the most to me. And honestly, I don't know what else to add to it. If you have something that I should have mentioned, by all means, leave it in a comment below. I would love to know what other things about the Arkham franchise you didn't like. And who knows, maybe I can come up with another 7 things in a future list that you guys have decided. If it fucking having fans write in for Jason Todd worked out so well, maybe it'll work out here too. But with that being said, thank you so much for watching, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you for putting up with my obnoxious voice. And I will see you guys later on. Have a good one.